There's a strange discomfort many of us carry, subtle yet persistent. It shows up when we scroll through social media, when we walk into a room full of people, when we hear the question, "So what do you do?" It's the feeling of being silently measured, judged, ranked. This is not a flaw in your personality. It's a symptom of the modern world. It's called status anxiety, and it's more common than you think. In today's society, your worth often seems to depend on how impressive your answers are. Your job title, your income, your lifestyle. These have become the currency of identity. But behind the polished images and polished resumes, there's a quiet epidemic of people feeling like they're not good enough. Why does this happen? And more importantly, what can we do about it? Let's begin by exploring the roots of status anxiety. The modern invention of success. Not too long ago, who you were was largely determined by where you were born. A peasant was a peasant, a king was a king. Social mobility was rare. Today we live in what's called a meritocratic world where it's said anyone can become anything. It sounds empowering, and in some ways it is. But this ideal comes with a dangerous side effect. If you're told you can be anything, yet you don't make it, the implication is clear: you must have failed. In other words, if success is earned, then failure must also be deserved. This mindset creates deep internal pressure. You don't just feel unsuccessful, you feel like you are the failure. We've gone from a world of external limitations to one of internalized expectations. And that switch, though invisible, can be crushing. The performance of identity. We live in a culture that encourages branding, not just of companies, but of people. You're expected to market yourself, to build a personal brand, to constantly present your best self to the world. This isn't always malicious, it's often just survival. But it turns life into a kind of performance. Instead of asking, "Who am I really?" we ask, "What will make me look good?" We shape our identities based on what we think the world wants rather than who we truly are. And every performance invites comparison. Comparison, of course, is the fuel of status anxiety. It's no longer enough to succeed, you have to succeed more than the next person. A good life isn't measured by satisfaction anymore, but by superiority, the hidden cost of ambition. Ambition is a double-edged sword. On one side, it motivates us to grow, build, and pursue dreams. On the other, it can turn into a relentless hunger, a need to prove ourselves over and over, even when no one is watching. We chase promotions not just for the pay, but for the validation. We buy luxury goods not always for joy, but for the silent applause they might bring. At its worst, ambition becomes addictive. The more you achieve, the more you feel you need to achieve just to keep your sense of worth afloat. What we often fail to realize is that status never fully satisfies. No matter how high you climb, there's always someone higher. No matter how perfect your life appears, the feeling of not being enough can still haunt you unless you change where you derive your worth. When value becomes conditional. In a world obsessed with status, love and respect become conditional. You're admired if you win. You're ignored if you fail. This conditional regard creeps into our own self-perception. We begin to love ourselves only when we're successful and despise ourselves when we fall short. This is not sustainable. A healthy identity cannot be built on fluctuating performance. True self-worth must be unconditional, something that remains intact even when we fail, fall behind, or go unnoticed. The irony is that the more we base our value on external metrics, the less secure we feel internally. We become fragile, easily wounded by criticism, easily inflated by praise, and always dependent on the opinions of others. The myth of the deserving rich. In societies that glorify meritocracy, wealth is often seen as a moral reward. The rich are assumed to be brilliant and hardworking. The poor are assumed to be lazy or unmotivated. But this narrative erases a critical factor: luck. Luck of birth, of health, of timing, of opportunity plays a massive role in every story. Yet modern culture often ignores this. It prefers the simplicity of a hero's tale. Hard work equals success. But when we fail to recognize luck, we judge both others and ourselves unfairly. We punish ourselves for not having what others have, even when our starting lines were never equal. And we ignore the quiet, invisible forces that shape every outcome. The role of social media. Social media is the most powerful amplifier of status anxiety ever invented. Every scroll brings an onslaught of curated lives, the success, the beauty, the achievements, the joy. But what we see is not reality, it's a highlight reel, a filtered, selected version of the truth. Still, our brains compare. We don't compare rationally, we compare emotionally. And in that emotional fog, it's easy to feel like we're behind, like everyone else is doing better, like we're missing some secret ingredient to being enough. Social media doesn't just reflect status culture, it intensifies it. It turns the personal into the performative. It makes everything a competition. And in the process, it often makes us feel like we're losing. Redefining success on your own terms. The most powerful antidote to status anxiety is a radical shift in how we define success. Instead of borrowing definitions from society, money, fame, beauty, power, we must ask, what matters to me? Maybe it's kindness. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's being a good parent, or cultivating deep friendships, or finding peace of mind. These things might not earn applause at a dinner party, but they're what truly fulfill. Redefining success doesn't mean abandoning ambition. It means aiming for a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. Learning to be enough. Being enough is not about doing more. It's about embracing who you are even when you're not at your best. It's about recognizing that your worth was never meant to be earned, it was always yours. This doesn't mean we stop striving. It means we stop striving out of fear. We work not to prove our value, but to express it. We grow not to fix ourselves, but to become more of who we already are. True confidence comes not from status, but from self-acceptance. The more you anchor your identity in something deeper than public approval, the more resilient and free you become. How to begin healing from status anxiety. Here are a few ways to start. Practice gratitude for things that don't bring applause. Solitude, rest, honesty, small joys. Limit your exposure to status-driven environments online and offline. Surround yourself with people who value character over credentials. Journal regularly about what matters to you, not your parents, not society, not your peers. Celebrate private victories, the ones no one sees but you. Final thoughts: you are not your resume. At the end of the day, you are not your job title. You are not your income. You are not your follower count or your GPA or your LinkedIn profile. You are a whole, complicated, beautiful human being, worthy of love, belonging, and dignity, regardless of what you've achieved. The question, what do you do, might be the first thing people ask, but it shouldn't be the first thing we ask ourselves. The better question might be, who are you becoming when no one's watching? Because that's where the real value lives, not in your status, but in your soul. If this message resonates with you, you're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, the journey of your life isn't to become someone impressive, but someone whole.